Hi friends, welcome back to the video. My name is Jessica. This is Jessica J Create, where I create and share with the hopes of inspiring and connecting with you. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a much long overdue challenge, and that is the this or that sewing challenge. With that being said, I know that came out like 6 months ago. But at the time, I was still just daydreaming about being here on YouTube, wishy-washy in and out, and I didn't create the video. So I wanted to remedy that by coming back to you and presenting my this or that options. Now, if you haven't heard of this in those 6 months, this challenge was introduced by Julie of the Curated Curvy. Her info is linked below, as well as the blog post going over this challenge. She was inspired by the Love to Sew podcast, which I'll also link below, even though I don't really listen to it, so I can't recommend or not whether or not it's a good one for you. But I figure I should just give you the background for the challenge. So what I'm going to do is go over a few different categories and present 2 options where I will choose either this or that. They are all sewing and creating inspired within that same context. So I'll go ahead and get started. I am going to be referencing my phone because I don't have this list memorized. Hey, so topic number 1 is sewing prep. It says, do I like shopping new or stash busting? Ooh, that's a tough one. I would have to say stash busting, simply because I'm more of an opportunistic sewer. I like to go see what I have and then decide what I want to make instead of having a vision and going out and trying to find the fabric. So stash busting. PDFs versus paper. I have never sewn with a PDF pattern. Not once. 0. Maybe I should do that this year, but definitely paper patterns. They're cheap, they're easy to find, they're easy to thrift. Wow. Yeah, I don't know. They're just easier. I've never tried a PDF pattern. And I don't have a printer at home right now. And also it just seems like cutting the pattern out and taping the pattern is a lot. Like, I don't want to do all that. But maybe I should try one just to see, so I can speak from experience and not from speculation. Cutting versus tracing, I'm definitely someone that cuts my patterns out. I rarely ever trace them unless they are older patterns or special to me in some way. Like I said, the paper patterns that I tend to use are the $1.99 or 99¢ from the thrift store, so I just cut them. If I change sizes, then I'll make modifications later. Muslin or just go for it? I'm just go for it 90% of the time. I do not have the time to make a muslin. Now, sometimes I'll make partial muslins where I'll just make like the top if I'm iffy about the fit, but typically I just go for it and then I make the modifications that I need to make later on in the sewing process. Our next bucket topic is fabric. The first question is in-store versus online. In-store. And that is simply because, like I said, I'm pretty opportunistic when it comes to creating my sewing projects and plans. So I tend to thrift most of my fabric, and I like to touch it. I like to see it. It inspires me. So in-store. Knits versus wovens. I have 2 cuts of knits in my stash. And that is only because they are basic and only because, I don't know, I thought about making like a tank top out of them. I do not sew with knits. I love a good woven. I love the way they press. I love how they listen. I love that they don't move around. They feel good. I barely even wear knits. I just am not a huge fan. Tumble dry or hang to dry. This has bitten me in the butt multiple times, but I'm still a tumble dry girly. With thrifting fabrics, sometimes I ruin them because I'll wash it and throw it in the dryer. But I'd rather pre-ruin a fabric in the way that I'm going to treat it anyway than having to go through the trouble of hang drying something. I should be better, but that is my truth. Rotary cutters versus scissors. This one I'm 50-50 on. I tend to use both in all my projects. I don't think there's any project where I've used just scissors or just a rotary cutter. It really just depends on how difficult the pattern is to maneuver around. I really like the weight and feel of scissors in my hand. But sometimes the rotary cutter is cleaner, so I don't have one for that. I'm in the middle. Topic number 3, clothing construction. Okay, first up, do I follow the pattern or do I wing it? I wing it. Yeah, I definitely wing it. I don't even read the pattern. It has not always gone well. Most of the time it does, actually, because I did go to school for fashion design, so I tend to buy the patterns more for the pieces than for the instructions. But sometimes they do some weird things with the patterns. I do look at the photos and follow along with the photos, but actually reading the instructions at no point happens in my process. A bias tape finish or a facing. I love a facing. I feel like they lay really flat and they're very clean, in my opinion, especially when they're like understitched and they just look really nice. So I would say a facing. Serge seams or French seams? 80% of the time I use serge seams. So I would say serge seams, but it really depends on the project. Button fly or a zip fly? Zip fly. But more for aesthetic than anything else. I like the way a zip fly looks and lays. Button by hand versus machine sewn. Probably should have put references for this. I don't know if we're talking about sewing buttonholes by hand or if we're talking about sewing a button on by hand. Button by hand versus machine sewn. Well, I like to machine sew my buttonholes, but I sew my buttons on by hand. Hopefully that answers the question. Fusible interfacing versus sewn in. I love a woven fusible interfacing, like a cotton woven fusible. It's my favorite. It feels really good. It never disappoints me. It wears very well over time. So there you go. Snip as you go or all at once. I definitely like to snip as I go, simply because I hate when I'm wearing a garment and there's a thread hanging that is in a tough spot that I probably missed. I'm not patient enough to sit and just take the 10 minutes it would take to snip all of those threads. So I snip as I go and I just toss them on the floor and then I sweep it up later. Or I end up wearing them like people wear cat or dog hair. It's fine. Press as you go or all at once. I press as I go, 100%. Pressing is one of my favorite parts of the sewing process. I love the heat, the smell of it, the submission of the fabric. That brings me so much peace. So I press as often as I possibly can, simply because I enjoy it. And I think it makes your garments look really nice in the end. All right, our last topic bucket here, number 4, is sewing habits. Am I a late night seamstress or daytime seamstress? I am an early morning daytime seamstress. Or I like to sew during the day, like on my off days, like today. I'll sew during the day with the sunlight from in the morning to later in the day. It's so quiet in the morning. I love it. Okay. Slow and steady versus frantic sewing. Woo! This here has been an area of growth for me, let me tell you. Back in the day, I would definitely say frantic sewing. I was 100% night before, still in the studio, finishing the garment that's going to be on the runway in 4 hours. And I hated it. I hated it. So now I'm much more of a slow and steady seamstress. I want to enjoy the full process. I want to take my time. I want to put my best foot forward. I will say that I still put limitations on how much time I'm willing to work on a project or how many times I'm willing to go over something. You know, done is better than perfect. So there we go. But no more frantic sewing. Even watching people frantically sew stresses me out now. So slow and steady for me. Tidy as you go or one big cleaning session. One big cleaning session. Like I said, I clip as I go. I throw those threads on the floor. I throw my fabric on the floor. it's pretty chaotic. I'm looking down because I'm looking at my floor right now. I'm in the middle of a project and there are totes to the side over here. There are threads everywhere. There's piles of pattern pieces. So at the end of a project, I tend to reset my room and start it all over again. In that way, I guess I like a little chaos. Well, there you have it, friends. Thank you so much for hanging out with me till the end of the video and learning a little bit about my sewing preferences. If this was a video that you enjoyed, feel free to give it the thumbs up and subscribe for more. Come hang out with me. Drop me a comment below and let me know some of your this or that preferences. Or if you're planning on making any type of video content, please feel free to tag me at Jessica J Create or Julie at the Curated Curvy. I had to think about it for a second. And I'm sure that even though it's 6 months later, she'd love to see it. I'd love to see it. So thank you again for being here. And remember, I love you. Have a good day.